Hi class, thanks for joining me on another screencast-o-matic lesson. This week, one of our learning targets is to understand the components that comprise or make up a sonnet. So you might be asking yourselves, when am I ever going to use this information? I can assure you that understanding the components of a sonnet will help you determine the meaning of it. In addition, this Shakespeare unit also exposes you to world literature, something we've not yet had in English 1. And it's important to develop cultural literacy, but most importantly, you need to understand form. We see form in our world every day. We use it to shape our ideas, explain natural phenomenon, and it even relates to buildings. So thinking about form in the context just mentioned is really no different to form in poetry. We're just looking at the architecture of the poem, which helps us understand its meaning. Think about your favorite songs. What do you like about them? The form or the architecture of that song is no doubt one reason you're drawn to it. However, we generally don't think about songs that way. But if you strip away the music and look at the form, you're going to see just how significant it is. In fact, even free form, or sometimes it's called open form, still uses form. It's just more loosely based, and the more you study it, the more you understand it. Try examining one of your favorite songs, and you'll notice its form because poetry and music are intertwined. In short, we use form to understand our world, celebrate our cultures, and express our ideas in the very same way that poetry does. And that is why it's still ever popular and relevant today. Okay, so let's move on and begin. And let's begin, by looking at the structure. Now, when I say structure, I'm really just referring to the form, or sometimes people call it the pattern of a poem. In this case, the form represents a Shakespearean sonnet. And all of these black lines, you should see my mouse in a yellow circle. All of these black lines here actually represent the lines or verse in this poem. We say verse because it has a special rhythm. If you recall any nursery rhymes from your childhood, or again going back to songs that you just can't get out of your head, that's because they are written in verse. And verse just has this sing-songy rhythm. Now, you might also be wondering as you're looking at this picture, why are there gaps among the different sets of lines here? Here's a gap, here's another gap, and here's another gap, okay? Well, when you see sets of 2 or more lines, the general term we call them are stanzas, okay? Right here, so this would be one stanza here, this set would be another stanza, this set would be another stanza, and this would be our last stanza. Okay, so this poem has 4 stanzas. However, stanzas can have different types of rhyme schemes, and sometimes we give them different types of special names because of the rhyme scheme, but the general term is still called stanza. So overall, the lines represent words that have a particular rhythm, and sets of verse that are together, like right here, right here, right here, and right here, are called stanzas. And if we break it down further, those sets consist of lines, right? So this stanza has 4 lines, this stanza has 4 lines, and this stanza has 4 lines. So we have 12 lines here. This last stanza has 2. So altogether, this sonnet has 14 lines. And a Shakespearean sonnet does have 14 lines, and that's something important for you to remember. Okay? All right, so let's move on. Now that we've established that structure refers to the pattern of a poem, and in this case, the structure represents a Shakespearean sonnet, and it's comprised of 4 separate stanzas that altogether have 14 lines, we can move on to quatrains. Okay, so Shakespearean sonnets have 3 quatrains. Okay, and you can see by the picture, the quatrains, you have an arrow here for each one. They're highlighted in blue, and they all have 4 lines. All right, and really, quatrain is just a word that means 4 lines of verse. Probably some of you musicians already knew that. And remember, verse just means words in a poem with a particular rhythmic pattern. So a quatrain is 4 lines of verse with a specific rhyme scheme. That's it. Easy peasy. Moving on. Whew, I need to take a breath. That was a lot of information. And if this is the first time you recall learning about a sonnet, that means it's a perfect time to review that basic information I just went over, okay? So let's do that. Let's see what we can remember. What does structure of a poem refer to? Think about it. What does the structure of a poem refer to? If the word pattern or form came to mind, you were right. And when you see lines of verse separated by gaps in the poem, so right here we're going to count this is 1, this is 1, this is 1, and this is 1. When you see that, what do you call that set? What are these sets called? Do you remember? We call them stanzas. Now, how many lines are in this Shakespearean sonnet? Now, go ahead and count if you don't remember. Okay? If you said 14 or you remembered it, you are correct. And if you came up with any other number, you better count slower next time. All right. Final question. How many quatrains are in a Shakespearean sonnet? I hope you said 3. Remember, a quatrain is just a fancy word for stanza. We call it a quatrain because it has 4 lines of verse, and those 4 lines of verse have a particular rhyme scheme. That was it. That was a pretty good review of what we went over so far today. Now, yes, I want to add on one final tidbit of information, but I promise it's the last part for today's lesson, okay? And I want to talk about those final 2 lines of a Shakespearean sonnet, all right? Now, of course, you can see up here what it's called already. We call it a couplet because there's 2. Think of a couple, right? So it's like these 2 are going hand in hand, all right? And both of these lines go hand in hand because they rhyme. Each word at the end of the line here and the line here, each word rhymes, okay? So if I say this lesson is done, now go have some fun, you should have recognized that it rhymed. And that's just how a couplet works too. All right, that's it. That is all I have for you today. So let's go to our final slide. Final slide. Now, we just went over plenty of information, and I'd really like you to think about it. It'll help you remember the information if you go back and you review what we just learned. Just 10 minutes of focused reviewing will help, okay? So what I would like you to do is take a look at what I have up here, and I want you to try to identify the parts in the Shakespearean sonnet. I don't care if you do it on a sheet of paper, if you do it on notes on your iPad, wherever you want to do it. The point is, I just want you to be able to identify these components on your own, okay? And when you think you have a really good understanding of it, I want you to go to Canvas and try the Ed Puzzle quiz that I have in there for you to see how much you remember. Okay? So, again, thank you for joining me. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.